show of hands, I can't see those of you right at the very back, but I can certainly see you in this first several rows here. Have you struggled to nail a perfect pitch or to secure your first round of investment? Are you even in that stage yet? Well, our next speaker, Wright, he is here to demystify what investors are looking for and to teach you how to pitch effectively. And he likes to point out it might not be what you typically expect when you think of a pitch. Now, our speaker is known as the Startup Catalyst. He is the Director of Startup Programs Europe, and he brings over 12 years of experience launching, funding, and scaling early-stage ventures. Let's give a round of applause to Corey.
Hey, everyone. How's it going? You guys doing all right? So we're switching back to English. You got the American accent here today. I think my slides will be up here in a sec, hopefully. But so happy to be here. How many of you are currently fundraising? It's a little hard for me to see from the fog, but I'll try. Who's here fundraising? Okay, some founders here. Great. So let's go. I'm here to talk about how to pitch investors and raise funding. And believe it or not, I've done this. So, you know, us US Americans, we are trained from this from an early age. So here's what I mean by that. So my first investor pitch was going to my parents and saying, like, hey, Mom, can you buy me some turkeys and pay for the seed for the turkeys, seed funding, right? And I make a lot of dad jokes. And I'll raise these turkeys and then sell them at Thanksgiving to the market and blah, blah, blah. And as you can see, had my first exit, sold it to my sisters. But no, jokes aside, my name's Corey. I've been working with startups for many, many years, and probably just in the last 2 years, seen about 500 pitch decks. And so what I'm going to try to do is share with you some tips and some tricks about fundraising and sort of bring a unique spin to it, hopefully. So fundraising, the pain is real. I talk with founders all the time. It's the one thing you can do if you really want thick skin and to master the art of being rejected, right? I know startups from Germany, where I live, and they've gone and they pitched in the US like 300 times to get that first check, yeah? So it's not an easy thing. And there's a lot of things you can talk about when it comes to fundraising, yeah? But here's the thing. You guys all have ChatGPT now. When I was doing my turkey business, there was no ChatGPT. So we're not going to talk about all of these things that you could just, you know, instead of Google GPT. Instead, what we're going to do is we're going to look at it a little bit differently, okay? We're going to look at signaling. What do I mean by signaling? So if we get a little bit nerdy, bear with me here, signaling is part of something called agency theory. Agency theory is basically contracts, negotiations. You got an investor, you got a founder. And what happens when you're trying to raise funding? Well, there's information asymmetry. You guys don't know anything about each other, and you're trying to piece together what's real, what's not. Are they a good investor? Are they a good founder? And what happens sometimes is if you don't know the right information, you get adverse selection, which means maybe you get the wrong investor, the wrong founding team, okay? And how do you mitigate this? Well, top right corner, it's through signaling. So there's 3 things about signals when it comes to fundraising, my personal opinion. Signals are perpetual. From the very first handshake with an investor, you're signaling something about your company to them, okay? They're important. They will make or break a deal. I can't tell you how many times I've stood in an investment committee room, and just because of the founder's attitude, they passed on a deal. Not because of the pitch deck, not because of the market size, just because of the signals the founder was giving. And then finally, the good news for all of you, right, is it takes a lot of work, but you can change or adjust the signals that you send to investors. So what we're going to do today is we're going to look at 10 fundraising components and how you can use these or be aware of them to send signals to investors, hopefully positive signals. Okay, these are the 10 components. Probably most of you have seen these things here. Maybe Sequoia recommends one more sort of component in there, or maybe someone says, oh, that's too much. But the thing here is these are not slides, okay? I am not giving you advice on the number of slides to put in a pitch deck. What I'm suggesting instead is you want to cover these 10 things and use them to send the right signals. And I'm suggesting that the order doesn't matter necessarily, okay? But these are components you want to be aware of. So let's jump right in. Share a story that highlights the problem, right? There's a lot of different bullet points that you can go into this, but let's pick a real example. Let's say you're a deep tech quantum startup, and I've had founders come to me and they're like, Corey, we can't use a story or personification to really share what we're doing. Like, we've got logarithmics and n over n and blah, 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 technical jargon. But I would say you can, right? You can say, hey, meet Sarah, the CTO of a pharma company, right? She needs to develop new drugs. Current computation costs a lot of money. Her team is very stressed. They can't get things out on the market fast enough. Here comes our quantum computer. We save them $500 million or $500,000 every month and allow them to get drugs on the market faster, right? So any type of technology or startup, you can sort of state your problem clearly. And why? Why do you want to state the problem clearly? Because the first thing you need to convince an investor is that it's a real problem. Not just something you care about, but a problem truly worth solving, and that it's a valuable problem to solve, and you really understand the customers. You understand who has this problem. So using personification, explaining it with very simple language so that they believe you that, hey, this startup has a valuable problem to solve. Next thing, explain what you do, right? Okay, here's the problem. Now, how do you fix it? Be able to quantify that value creation and keep it short and simple and be able to say it in one sentence. So we make filthy water drinkable. These are all real startups, by the way. They're not talking about, oh, we use reverse osmosis with sodium charged particles and a nanomembrane filter, blah, blah. No, we make filthy water drinkable. Very succinct, very easy to understand. You also want to show what you do from the customer perspective. So do you guys know who this is? This is called Matchbox, which later became Tinder. So don't raise your hand if you currently know this product well, but look what they did, yeah? They said, hey, if you're using a product, this is what it looks like. Before swipe up, swipe down, it was like or not like. Here's the matches you can get. You can message. And then they talked about the technology, what was cool back in the day, GPS, hyperlocation, cool stuff, right? So send a good signal that you can simplify complex information, you can understand what's creating value for your customer, and that you're able to simplify or focus on not product features, but customer benefits, yeah? Because then you're gonna be able to sell, and that's what investors are looking for as well. Third thing, who are your customers? How are you gonna get your customers? What's your strategy? How much does it cost? What's the potential there? Okay, probably all of you have heard of TAM, SAM, SOM. Probably all of you sort of just want to curl up in a ball and die when you think about TAM, SAM, SOM, right? Because, I don't know, raise your hand if your investors have told you your TAM's not big enough. Yeah, some of you, okay? Raise your hand if your investors have told you, well, we don't believe your TAM is that big. Also probably some of you. Well, what's the point here? What are you going to try to do? Well, first of all, TAM is not the value of some trillion-dollar publicly traded market industry. It's the value of potential revenue to you in the problem space that you're able to operate in the long term. Then SAM, what is it? It's focused. There's lots of segments. Which segment do you go after first? And why, right? How do you create the most value? And then SOM, what is SOM? It's not share of the market, because guess what? You're startups. You don't have a share of the market. Unfortunately, not yet. So it's serviceable, obtainable market. It's sort of a strategic thinking. How many customers can we acquire in the next amount of time? So you want to be able to send signals with these. And a lot of startups are a little bit confused. And so what is the signal? TAM. We have a big path to growth and increasing our valuation so that you, Mr. or Mrs. Investor, can get a return on your money. SAM. I understand my customers. I'm not going to try to conquer all the segments. I'm going to go after the first strategic segment. And then SOM. You're signaling that I'm smart at business. I can think in terms of unit economics and what I can actually acquire in terms of customers over the next funding round. Market, problem, space. Who else is in here, right? So this is what I see a lot of startups doing. You've got some, you got an X thing here, you got a Y coordinate here, you've got some features, you've got like the amount of AI that's in your product. Your startup's way over here, and then all the competition like Google and NVIDIA and all that, they're way down here, and that's your competitive sort of matrix. Don't raise your hand if I'm describing half of your pitch decks here. Okay, instead of doing this, maybe try this, right? A competitive matrix, and focus not on your product features, focus on what's going on in the market. What's going on in the problem space? Where are your customers? How is that problem solved? What's the pricing? What's going on in that industry? Are you future-proof? All of this stuff. And you're gonna send some signals that investors will like. The first one, you're not lazy, okay? You did your research. You're a business owner. You wanna know who you're competing against. Second signal, you're not naive. There is competition. There are ways that your customers currently deal with the problem that you want to solve. And finally, that there is a strategy or a way to carve out a part of that market, okay? Component number 5, and this often relates to the competitive aspect, yeah? You see it together a lot, but it's still very important. What's your unfair advantage? Is it your co-founders? Do you know something about the market others don't? Is there a new regulation? Maybe you have some cool technology, right? Maybe you're a spin-off. And what you want to be able to signal here, oh yeah, I forgot about this one. Airbnb, great slide. Look at some other startups and get some examples from them, right? They talked about basically a market advantage and a unique way of creating value for their customers to sort of signal like, hey, we've got a special thing. Dropbox, you guys remember Dropbox when it was actually a startup? So what did they say? They said, hey, we use Python. I think everyone here uses Python now. And we use Amazon servers. Probably all of you are on like Lightsail or S3 or whatever, yeah? So they're like, hey, this is our technical advantage. This is why we're able to scale. And what's the signal you want to send? We're gonna kick ass, yeah? Because a lot of startups fail. Investors expect this. They're looking for 1 or 2 winners in their whole portfolio. And the signal you want to send is, it's so unfair. It's so unfair to be us because we're gonna wipe out all the rest and we're gonna do a great job, okay? Revenue model, pretty simple, right? You would think, how do you make money? What's an average transaction look like? What are your critical assumptions? Sometimes it's not so easy. So if you think of a complex business model, if we go back to Airbnb again, if you think about it, lots of different sort of options, apartments, living rooms, different number of nights, different values, all of this could be hard to say what an average transaction is. So simplify, make some assumptions, average it out, and be able to tell investors, hey, we take 10%, 3 nights, $70 a night. This is how we make money, even if it's more complex than that. And know the numbers behind the numbers. So I'm curious if anyone can shout out why you should not invest in this SaaS startup. But what's important to really know is like, show what the core assumptions to your business model are. Signal to investors that you're thinking about it. And if anyone's curious, you don't want to invest in this because the customer acquisition cost is more than the lifetime value. It's a nonprofit, a great nonprofit. So what are the 4 essential metrics you should all think about from day 0? I tell founders, before you even form the GmbH or your Delaware C Corp or whatever, know these 4 assumptions and watch if you're able to rise towards them in the right way because they affect your growth and they affect your scalability, your customer acquisition costs, lifetime values, how long it takes to recuperate that money that you need from those customers to invest into getting new customers, all of these things, yeah? So what do you want to send as a signal to investors? You're thinking about these things. You're thinking in this way, in these core assumptions, and you understand that these assumptions are critical because investors, again, they want to see this growth, that you're able to increase your valuation and get them to an exit scenario. Your team. We just had a session about why team is so important, right? I love one of my mentors. She always told me, Corey, smart investors invest in people first, products second. And that's what you want to be able to show with your team. You want to send the signal that we're competent, we're self-aware, we are biased towards action. Yeah? We're not just sitting around hoping investors come to us. We're out there hustling, growing our customers, growing our demand, and really signaling that it's not just about our PhDs and our experience and we worked at McKinsey or whatever, but we're hustling. We really want to solve this problem, okay? And here's the thing. This is perhaps the most important takeaway. All signals are team signals. Everything I talked about so far and everything I'm going to talk about, they're team signals. Investors are judging you because these signals that you send from your pitch deck, from your business, reflect on you as a team, so be aware of this. I like to talk about what's your traction. If you have such a great team, then what have you done, yeah? What milestones? You have revenue. Are you pre-revenue? Did you invest your own money? Whatever it is, right? So back up your assumptions or your statements about your team with what you are actually able to build and signal that there's momentum. You're not waiting around. Things are moving forward. You're skin in the game. So if any of you ever go to the US to raise funding, investors will be like, how much of your own money did you invest? They want skin in the game to know that you're committed to what you're building. and that your team is good, that this is the proof of the traction. Okay, we're almost there. 2 more to go, and then we're gonna wrap things up. You guys good? Yeah? Not too much American energy? Okay, let's go. So, how much money do you need? How far will it get you? Who's leading around? All of this stuff. But here's a key point. Don't pitch the amount of funding you heard from another founder that investor likes to write. Like, oh, I heard their check size is 500K or whatever. Don't pitch that. Why? Because you need to pitch what you actually need to get to the next risk reduction milestone to raise the next funding round. If I'm an investor, why should I give you 200K to then have you basically need to raise another funding round, but no one wants to invest in you because you didn't get what you actually need to get that round, right? Okay, that was a lot, so bear with me here. Point is, what do you actually need to get to the next round? That's what you should be pitching to investors, regardless of what they invest in. I love this slide from iCrowd.U. This was their Series A, yeah? And they said, look, we're not gonna tell you how this pie chart is, and we spend this much on admin and this much on product, and we hire this engineer and that. No. They said, you give us 3 million euros, and then what we're gonna do is we're gonna get 255 transactions a day, and we're gonna make 23 million in revenue in the next 2 years. So they showed investors what the investors get with the money, not what they do with the money. Yeah? So you wanna signal that you have a plan, that you care more about outcomes than outputs. Outputs are there, they're important, but even more important is the outcomes. What do you get in terms of the next funding round with that money? And that you have a growth mindset. You're not afraid to ask for what it takes. It takes money to make money. Don't be afraid to ask for what you actually need from investors. Okay, component number 10, last thing. What's the opportunity here? Is there future potential? Is there growth, yeah? Who is going to acquire you down the road, right? How are the investors going to exit? Another great slide. So this was from Mint. I don't know if you guys know Mint. It was a fintech company in the US. And they said, oh, maybe Google or Yahoo or whoever. Yahoo, I don't think acquired anyone, right? Maybe Intuit, maybe Microsoft, whatever. They might acquire us, right? And it turns out that it was Intuit. Intuit bought them out. They had a great exit. And sometimes it goes according to plan. Sometimes it doesn't. That's not the point. The point is, what are you signaling? You're signaling that hockey sticks can be adjusted in terms of their angle, yeah? So don't believe them 100%. That you know the game. While VCs might say, oh, we love your vision or we love this, it's true. They also want to make money, okay? And that now is the time. There's an opportunity. They want to get in now while your valuation is low so that they can make a lot of money later with you towards the end. All right, so finishing up here, let's talk about some final signals. Just a few extra free tricks for you guys. First of all, due diligence, okay? I hate to break it to you, but due diligence is not about the documents in your Google Box or Drive folder, yeah? No, it's actually the whole process from the first handshake. So be really careful what signals you send, because if you're well prepared and you're organized, that's signaling to investor, that person knows how to run a business. Okay, that person's organized. That person responds quickly to my request for more information. That's probably how they respond to customers that need something from them, right? So they're actually judging your ability to work with clients on how you do your data room. How do I know this? Because I did this to poor founders, okay? So next signal you need to remember. You're being observed, you're being interpreted, not always the correct way, and you're being judged, whether you like it or not. And sometimes unfairly. It's very true. There's a lot of bias in the world of VC, right? Female funding is a big topic. But either way, you need to know this. You're being judged, you're being looked at. People really care. What kind of signals are you sending? So, signal emotional intelligence, yeah? Signal sales that you can sell, like how you pitch, how you talk, your attitude, your handshake, eye contact. It's signaling how are they gonna work with customers, yeah? And signal passion, that you can attract people to you who want to be on your team, who want to be around you, and help you grow this company. Final signal tip, okay? Good founders, it's something about them. They have this way of figuring out what people really want, and they create value. Yeah? You just talk to them in a room, and they're somehow like networking you to someone you never even know you needed to talk to, but they made that connection, yeah? So you want to send this signal that you're able to recognize what people want and need, and then be able to create that value. You have generosity, but also humility, and you're a people person who really cares and understands that startups are about value creation. So, I want to share a final story here, and then maybe we have a little bit of Q&A. So we're going to talk about networking because hopefully the rest of the night you're not listening to me shouting up here and blah, 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 blah. You're actually networking with investors. So I'm going to give you a little story that helps you, I hope. And why I'm doing that story, here's my contact information. Okay, so I was at a Cash Walk event. We have one coming up in November. And it was at the end of the event, and everyone was pretty tired. There was a founder that I knew. He had a health tech AI startup, okay? And then I was hanging out with a deep tech investor from Austria. And the founder comes over and he's like, hey, how's it going? So do you invest in like AI, health tech type startups? And the investor's like, yeah, sorry, man, we're a CVC, we're from Austria, we're more focused on this kind of stuff. And I kid you not, the founder's like, oh, okay, thanks. He just sort of walks away. It was a long day for this poor guy, yeah? Okay, so what I did is I grabbed the founder. I was like, hey, man, come back here, come back here. I knew the investor. I was like, okay, bear with me, teachable moment here. I'm a dad, so I love to just, be a dad. Okay, ask him, do you know any like other funds that I haven't heard of that are maybe interested in health tech AI startups? He's like, do you? Do you know anyone? And the investor's like, well, have you talked to these guys over there in that city? No. What about these people over there? Blah, blah, blah. No. Now the founder has 2 brand new investor leads that he can go to and say, yo, I was talking to this person and they mentioned you, yeah, that he didn't have a single clue about before the night began. So what's the point of that? I know it's really stressful to raise funding. It's really stressful to try to convince these investors that you're the one that's going to make it. But if you can think about what are the signals you're sending, and then look to create value, even for investors you don't know. Like, why should you create value for some investors? They have a bunch of money, right? But change your mindset there and say, hey, when I meet an investor, how's it going? Are you enjoying this event? Don't pitch them right away. Tell me about your fund. What do you do? What do you do in your free time? Oh, you invest in this and this and this. And you know in your head, okay, they're never going to invest in me. That's okay. Keep the conversation going. Have you met this startup? I have a friend. They're building something really cool over there. Would you like an intro? No pressure? Yeah, okay, cool. And you create value for them. You treat them as humans because I'll tell you a little secret. Investors are sick of founders pitching them without checking in what they actually invest in, right? And they get treated even in a way that they don't even feel that human anymore. Over-exaggeration, maybe, but the point is, look to create value, help them, give before you get, send the right signals, and I guarantee you, you will network your way to the right investors. And every single serial entrepreneur I've met that is good at fundraising, they don't expect money from the first contact they meet. They network their way to the other investors, and that's how they put together their Series A and beyond rounds. So that's all from my side. I think we're going to have some questions. Thank you very much, and really looking forward to hanging out with you all tonight. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Corey. So as the last time, we have a few questions that have been submitted by the audience. And the first question is, this is from Roger. How do I proceed if I have a good idea, but I'm concerned that my idea should not reach too many people? How can I be sure to find an investor and still disclose something?
Yeah. So I have a bit of tough love for you now. The quote I'm going to say is, ideas are worth shit, execution's everything. And most investors have heard every idea at least 5 times, actually. So my recommendation, there's a great book, by the way, Startup Owner's Manual. You want to do customer discovery, customer validation. So go talk to as many people as you can about your idea. Don't give them the IP or the tech or the code or something like this. That would be stupid. Be careful with corporate CVCs. Certain of the really big ones you got to watch out for. They have great IP departments. But in general, talk to as many people as you can, actually. Get that feedback because you're going to need to pivot at least 50 times. Exaggeration, maybe, in the next couple of years. So the sooner you start that process by talking to people, the better it is for your startup.
Perfect. Next question. Who else have I got here? Oh, yes, repeat. Okay, I've just heard there in the audience. What was the book? Startup Manual?
Startup Owner's Manual, Steve Blank. There's another one. It's called Venture Deals, How to Be Smarter Than Your VC and Your Lawyer. 2 great books if you're fundraising.
Startup Owner's Manual, Steve Blaine.
Yep.
And the second?
Venture Deals, Brad Feld.
Okay. What was the best pitch you've ever seen? Asks Neil.
Oh, the best pitch I've ever seen. Maybe two come to mind. One was it was a female founder, and she it was like a food product, okay? And she actually like taped samples of the product under all of the seats in the auditorium. And then when she was talking about her solution, she's like, by the way, if you reach under your seat, you can enjoy our great product. It was amazing to actually create that experience. And the other one was maybe one where the founder, I don't know how he did it, went through 50 slides in 3 minutes, but it was like an animated video telling the coolest story ever. So I don't know if they raised any funding from those, but they're definitely some pretty cool pitches.
But I find that actually very interesting from my perspective as a storytelling trainer. There's another book recommendation here called Talk Like TED by Carmen Gallo, I think. And one of the things he says in this is use a prop. When people come and they have an object that people can touch, can feel, can engage with, can taste, can smell, can experience, it makes you, I think it was like 20 times more likely to be remembered.
Yeah.
And you're illustrating that because it's the first thing that came to mind for you too. Any more questions? How can I find investors when you just arrived in a new country and you don't know anyone? Asks curious who hasn't even written their name. Write your name, that's the first step.
All right. Dear Curious, so my recommendation would be, I mean, it depends on any context here, right? Do you have a startup? Do you not have a startup? What's going on? But again, like what I mentioned in the last story is network, okay? Don't network with the goal of just trying to know someone and say, oh, I'm connected to them on LinkedIn. Network with the goal of creating value, being known as a person who creates value. Go to different events, talk with people, talk to other founders. By the way, one of the best secrets for success in fundraising is to talk to other founders who just did a round. Even do due diligence on investors. Say like, hey, what was it like getting a fund from them or getting a round from them? Were they good to work with? What was it like? So talk to other founders and create value. That would be my recommendation.
Yeah, and on my side, what I've seen, I don't know if you agree with this, Corey, but we all know we make those quick connections on LinkedIn and then you forget about it. Some of the most memorable connection requests from my side have been when somebody reaches out with a quick voice message and it will only be 20 seconds and then you hear their energy, you feel a little bit more about them, and it's much more memorable.
Yeah, I agree, 100%. Or even get on WhatsApp or whatever. I think investors are open to that sometimes. It depends on their region or the country. Yeah, create something that you stand out. You're not just another person that wants to know them because they have the word VC in their title.
Yeah. Any final questions to come through? Roger, what is the best way to get investors or to get to know investors and present my product or idea to them?
Yeah, a very, very similar question. And I encourage you to come back to the panel that I'm with later tonight because one of the entrepreneurs is going to talk about how they did it. But in my opinion, first of all, do your homework, yeah? There's thousands and thousands of investors, and not all of them are a fit. So figure out maybe like what are the sort of the first, second, and third tier investors you want to work with, and then start with the third tier, practice, get a bunch of no's, move to the second tier, get less no's, and then go to the investors that are really important for your fund, that are a perfect match, and pitch them.
Great response. Anything else coming through? It looks like, oh, Daniel, quickly here. Oh, okay, what was the worst pitch you've ever seen?
Oh, the worst, oh man, okay. I've seen some bad ones. One was like, he's like, oh, I've got a plastic thing for bongs. And I'm like, okay, tell me about it. He's like, yeah, it's like a condom. I'm like, okay, so condoms for bongs? Yeah. And he like walked away. I was like, what? But even maybe worse than that, at least I was creative a little bit. Okay, fine. There's some weird things in the US, okay, just trust me. But the other pitch I saw, this was in Frankfurt. So the startup just decided they had just raised a little angel round, and they decided they didn't want any more funding. So they're like, yeah, we don't want to show slides anymore. But then they still got up on the page, and they basically were like, yeah, so we're cool. We got some stuff. We're doing some cool thing, blah, blah, blah. But we don't really want any funding. And then walked off the stage. That was like, talk about signals, the worst signal you could send as a founder.
A question from me before we finish. How important is it for somebody to kind of stand their space and present themselves in front of people, making that eye contact, versus over-relying on a slide or a tool behind. Because that's one thing that I see a lot, is people just be like, I'm going to walk you through these things here, and you're going to find, and you don't make that connection, and doesn't make people seem very confident or competent either.
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, there's different ways to do it, and that's why I said the 10 components that I talked about, that's not 10 slides per se. But my recommendation is, again, investors are trying to see, does this person have the ability to pitch to not just me, but to customers, potential employees, partners, regulatory officials, whoever? And so showing that you have that skill somewhere in your founding team is super critical. And the slides should really just be, it depends on the setting. So if it's a big 3-minute quick pitch thing, very, very simple. They should just accentuate the story that you're trying to tell. They should back it up. If you're in a 10 to 20-minute sort of investor pitch where you're in the deal room or talking to the investment committee, there you need a little bit more, but it's still about how do you present, what is the core message? And if you think about it, 10 components, 1 sentence each. What is the 1 sentence for each of these things that is enough information that the investors are curious to ask more questions? So it's not about giving them everything all at once. It's about giving them the right information at the right time that they want to keep the conversation going.
Corey, thank you so much. That is very, very practical, actionable, super helpful. Thank you. Round of applause for Corey, everyone.
Thank you.